Hi, I'm Malcolm Venable, an entertainment journalist here in LA, and I'm really happy and honored to be here with you all today, moderating a discussion for the Writers Guild Foundation's Inside the Writers' Room with Insecure. As you know, Insecure ended its 5-season run on December 26th. Still sad about that. Cementing its legacy as a groundbreaking, beloved series that's going to be talked about and influencing writers for generations to come. With us today to talk about how the room evolved each season and how they approached crafting those final glorious 10 episodes are creator, writer, executive producer, and star Issa Rae, writer, executive producer, and showrunner Prentice Penny, writer and executive producer, Amy Aniobi, writer and co-executive producer Phil Augusta Jackson, writer and co-executive producer Laura Kittrell, writer and producer Grace Edwards, writer and producer Jason Liu, writer and producer Fran Richter, writer and executive story editor Eli Wilson Pelton, writer and story editor Kinsey Young, and writer and story editor Mike Goyo. Thank you all for being here. I'm again honored to be here. What a marvelous thing you have created and left for the whole world. So let's jump right in. How did, and this question is more for Issa and Prentice, how did you know or decide that Insecure would end in season 5?
It was just, felt like the right amount of time. It was something that Prentice and I agreed on from season 1. We kind of were just like, how long do you want to go? And I just, knew going into it, I loved, and we surpassed the British model of television, but I love that British TV shows just know when to end and are kind of out and about. They tell their story, they go, you miss them, and you're like, but I'm satisfied. And that's kind of the feeling that I wanted for this show.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that we both I think said it at the same time. We were like 1, 2, 3, go. I think it was almost like that. It was weird that it almost synced up that way. It felt like 4 was too short to finish the story, and it felt 6 was like, ooh. And we were in the middle. Also, think of making season 1, and season 1 was just so. I was like, I can't see us surviving making the show like this. And so it just felt the right amount of time. Like never wanted to just overstay your welcome. It felt like it gave us certainly an ending to target, I guess.
It's often been said that Issa and Mala's friendship is a true love story of the show. Can you talk about how you developed, how you approached, developing that relationship over the course of the 5 seasons? Were there ups and downs mapped out?
From jump, we knew that we wanted to make this a story about, yes, their love story. But I remember Prentice and I discussing, there were other shows where female friendships weren't as authentic and they were more frenemies than actual friends. And so we agreed from jump, like we wanted them to be legitimate friends. And then as we started to tell the story, there were cracks in their relationship, and we had these paper cuts developing. And by season 3, we'd really gotten them to this place where, Molly was a bit overbearing, and Issa was evolving into this new person and kind of setting out on her own outside of this relationship. And Prentice really had the idea to kind of in season 4 come in where Issa and Molly don't fuck with each other, and that idea really just resonated with all of us. And in the room, we all had friendship breakup stories to share, and the idea of depicting that through a season was really, really exciting to us.
Yeah, I think we, at the time too, at the beginning, we had also, I think, Girlfriends went off in like 2007 during the writer's strike. And so, it had been 8 years from the time of seeing like Black women friendships, at least in the forefront of television. And I think like there were a lot of reality shows where Black women were pitted against each other and arguing and fussing. And it was just like, that's not this. And obviously, like, for people who follow the show know that, like, Molly's sort of inspired by a person in Issa's personal life, and that friendship's a real friendship. So we just always wanted to see Black women be friends and supporting each other and not sort of tearing each other. We felt there's a world where those shows exist and that's fine, but we didn't want that to be ours. And I think a real testament to like how the show I feel always worked with Issa and I is how she was referencing the idea for like Molly saying, hey, we don't, mess with each other anymore. But that really also came from Issa's idea of wanting to start season 4 like a 90s movie when like somebody's in the middle of chaos and you're like, how did I get here? And then you rewind and see that. And like, that's always felt like that was always our vibe, was like, she'll say something or I'll say something and it would just continue to grow off of that. And that would just, obviously be a huge part of the room. But I think that was always something great when Issa and I would sit down and to talk about the seasons. It would just be springing ideas, and off of that we would just sort of like feed off each other, I think, in really positive and creative ways.
Should we do this again?
Should we do do another?
Off of that last point, Prentice, as you were approaching the final season, what themes were popping out to you? I thought it was beautifully done. It was sort of wish fulfillment as everybody got a sort of happy ending, but what were the themes that you were planning and how did you sort of map out how you knew the ending would go?
I mean, I think we always come into this season with an idea or a theme, right, at different times. And this one was really like, am I going to be okay if, and obviously there's a lot of, am I going to be okay if, the relationship I thought I was going to have doesn't work out? And am I going to be okay if, my mom passes away? Am I going to be okay if this or that or whatever the things are? And really, it just kind of came out of that. When we started I've said in interviews that this was the first season I thought Issa the person and Issa the character were pretty aligned. Like Issa has a really great sense of separating herself from Issa the character. But this was the first time I really felt that like out the gate, Issa the person, Issa the character were adamantly against ending with Lawrence. And it really, over the time of creating the season, the Issa the character and the person both kind of came around to entertaining that idea. And it was a really, in the 5 seasons I've seen it, there's always a healthy separation of the two. And it was really fun to watch, but we didn't know where we were going to go. We wrote various finales, broke different finales. R.I.P. Revolver, and just like all kinds of crazy stuff that we were just, because it's just a hard thing. And again, props to like, I just can't imagine it without this writing staff, because again, props to Amy and Aniobi, who was like, God, we're putting so much pressure on ourselves. Like, at the end of the day, like these characters' lives will continue. And like, we're just getting out of the plane, not following them, but they're going to continue. And so that was, it was, again, just the beauty of the room and the people who love the show. Just, we wouldn't be here without everybody here contributing in so many amazing ways. But we didn't know we always knew, the one thing we knew at the end of the day was that we wanted the character to be comfortable, to be secure in her insecurities. That was always and it was like, how do we get there, right? So that's the destination. How we get there, we don't know, but we know that's the end goal.
We're dying to know some of those alternate endings. And you said RIP, who died? Who died? Tell us. No, I'm kidding. Those things in the vault, huh?
Yeah, you don't need to know about that.
Nobody needs to know about.
Prentice, a minute ago, you mentioned girlfriends, and we were curious, were there any show endings or finales that you might have been inspired by, or that you all took some inspiration from as you were mapping out how to conclude?
Yeah, 6 Feet Under was a huge thing we kept talking about in the room, and obviously there's a lot of pressure on HBO finales through Sopranos and Game of Thrones, and people are obviously having strong feelings about the way shows end, right? It's always tough because there's, starting a show and ending a show, I think, are the hardest things to do successfully. But 6 Feet Under was a big inspiration of how we wanted, not so much copying it, but the feel it felt like. And that was a big thing we talked about in the room a lot. Am I missing anything else? Other shows that we talked about? I just remember that one being the most talked about. But.
And then Amy watched it without having seen the series and ruined herself for.
I was like,
there's never been a finale that spoiled more of a series than the 6 Feet Under finale.
What did this make y'all feel? Because I felt this. No, I'm sorry, 6 Feet Under. You're a great show.
What was it about? I'm curious. Quickly, what was it about 6 Feet Under that you found so inspiring?
We just talked about it in the room. I don't remember now what was this.
Okay.
I remember like the
One of
specific
most
things.
satisfying finale. I feel like we talked a lot about how finales we didn't want to be like, you know, certain HBO finales that didn't go over well with their fans, and we were like, not that. And then we were sort of like, okay, so what are the ones that feel good that you, like as fans of the show, you felt satisfied? And there are so many fewer of those. But I mean, the 6 Feet Under finale, which I watched, is literally a character driving off into the sunset and imagining the ends of, I mean, is this a spoiler? Like the ends of, so I won't spoil it, you know, go back, watch it. And so that feeling of like, oh, I know where these characters, I know they're going to be okay. My friends are going to be okay. I think that's the feeling. My family is going to be okay is the feeling that 6 Feet Under seemed to give people. And
I think you did not watch the show. Everybody died.
Yeah.
I know.
I was gonna
like
say
their whole life.
No, but it really happens. It's not an imagination thing.
It really happens in our show too.
I never watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Eli, close your ears.
Oh, sorry, Eli. It's been 10 years.
I was gonna, wait, yeah, that's an old show.
140
That's an old show.
You spoiled it for all of them.
Oh, sorry. Oh, who's in the
But with 6 Feet Under was definitely a model, and yes, it's like the most perfect finale, series finale ever. But you know, like obviously, like Fresh Prince was also an inspiration in a show that ended so well. You know, thinking about how he's leaving behind this house and this family and the emotions that it brings out. But they're just we talked about a lot of the finales that we loved, and you know, just wanted to pick our what was most appropriate for our character's journey.
And what was very clear was wanting to end it on Issa Rae again. I think that was the one thing that we do. We wanted that last thing to be an Issa Rae scene.
Yeah, we knew that scene from jump.
Yeah.
Also, from a technical standpoint, I could be wrong. Was there something just very simple about the passage of time too that we borrowed from 6 Feet Under? Or am I totally misremembering the 6 Feet Under finale?
No, there's
I might be
passages in
misremembering.
that finale.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was our thing, but I mean, to Issa, I mean, obviously, you know, to Issa's amazing credit of, you know, she wanted to tie back in the idea of birthdays as like bookends, right? Because the pilot starts with the birthday and the finale ends around birthdays. And so there were just so many ways that I thought Issa was very smart in connecting dots from like almost treating it like bookends and being like, what can we connect from the thing we started with to the thing that we're ending with? And it just, but you know, it was great, but it was tough to get there.
Digging into the room itself, so I was going to ask what was the room's process for breaking story each season, but a great fan question here is, what was your favorite game or activity from Vicky? What was your favorite game or activity that you all used to spark creativity and brainstorm in the room?
Shooting each other with Nerf guns.
Nerf guns was fun.
I feel like I mean, we did a lot of coloring in coloring books, but as far as like interactively, it feels like we used a lot of like little signs to kind of troll each other, like little cards. We had like, at one point, that probably started in season 1, and then we added to it over the years.
Yeah.
By season 4 in person, we had such a great collection. And then in season 5, you know, we were virtual, we didn't get to use them, but there were all kinds of different cards that you could kind of like reach for on the table and hold it up if you had, you know, something you wanted to comment on. Like there was a card that said boring. So I feel like that was one of Issa's favorite cards.
That was
you know,
my favorite
sometimes
card. That's my favorite
kind
card.
of carefully hold up a boring card.
Thank you very much. We had You a Genius, which is DJ Khaled really set the tone for our room. I don't remember why. Oh, that's when he like in season 1 he had the phrases where he was talking to himself. I want to say
Yeah.
It wasn't fair, but it was to his phone. You smart. You a genius. To that, and that really set the tone for our writers room. Like we set a safe space at first for people. So that was, I think, one of the first cards that I drew, and then progressively, as we got to know each other, then it was like, "You stupid."
That's a terrible idea.
All right, so racist. Okay. But yeah, that was fun. And I think, what was also really helpful was, Prentice set this tone of just us going out and living life with each other, living life separately. And so we would take a lot of trips, we would go to dinners, we would play games, we went to Disneyland. We spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and we mined so much of our stories for this show, and you have to feel comfortable sharing parts of yourself. And I think that's also where it started. Like the material came from our own lives. Like everybody in this Zoom, everybody in the writer's room who's contributed has shared a story that's ended up in the show.
I was gonna say, I think the thing that was spark creativity is doing the things that were so unrelated to anything that was a writing thing, whether it was like ordering a bunch of desserts from Starbucks and just sampling desserts, or having like pie or cakes off
one by one.
Yeah, just like which thing has the best cake and pie, and just ordering a bunch of pies and cakes and just doing puzzles. Like I remember season 1, it was puzzles all the time, doing the puzzles. And it was just all these little moments that literally had nothing. I remember we had one thing that was about what are we gonna do if we win the lottery? It was like go to Greece, make a production of Greece in Greece. It was like noodles. Somebody put noodles up there. It was like all these little things that had nothing to do with writing were always the things that would just break up like the grind of writing and just how
I think we came up with a lot of the shows within the shows, just because things like that. Like in the what we do for $1 million, wasn't one of them like buy crackles?
Yes, we're gonna buy Crackle.
We had a lot of fun with Crackle.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We're gonna buy Crackle. We could probably buy Crackle for less than $1 million.
We had a show called The Art, the More Of.
The Art, the More Of.
You guys look like you had a ball, and I'm curious to be like low-key messy. I'm curious, like, were there ever any significant disagreements about story, and like, how did you all get over the impasse when everybody's, pretty resolute in what they want to do?
Amy's crying right now.
I know, I'm crying because I'm laughing. But I will say we had kind of a rule that started season 1 that it was like, if it was divisive, it goes in the show. It's like, I feel like our fights about story typically ended up creating better story. That was something that was really wonderful. And I think the first instance was in season 1. Because the fight between Issa and Molly in episode 7, where Molly says like, or Issa says, "Are you just mad because you can't keep a nigga?" And I remember Prentice pitching that line in the room, and I was like, "That's too cold." Imagine what would happen if your friend said that, and I really imagined it, and then I just started crying. And I was like, "That's too mean. She can't say that." And he was like, "It's got to go in now." And it was like that was kind of, I felt like that was a turning point, not only of trust, of like, obviously just being like, oh yeah, if I am having these emotions, it does belong in there. But then also it feels like every single season, whenever something like that happened, it's like, oh, it's got to go in.
It's funny because like the way there was like two, because we would break stuff where like we'd break stories together kind of in a loose way, and then Issa would take a room and I would take a room, and we just to move faster. And I think simultaneously at the same time, Issa's room was doing is Jared gay if he did this, and those moves were kind of happening independently. And I remember when they came out and pitched the Jared stuff, that became a real argument. And then we were doing the Molly scene, and that like the next day or so, that became a real argument. And it was almost like, oh, so just like figuring the show out in a very early stage of like, at the same time, these kind of like these feelings were happening, and it felt, oh, that's the show. These things, if we're arguing, then the characters can argue about it.
In terms of staffing the room and creating the team, Prentice, I read or heard one of the things that you were sort of mandating is like, don't send me 12 Issas. Like you deliberately wanted to have a room that was full of people with a diverse background so that this story and material would be richer, which makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious, as you rounded out the room, what were you looking for? Was it like, I want the indie person, and I want the very sad person, and I want the really mathematical person? I don't know, but I'm just curious in the ways that you sort of populated your world.
No, I think Issa and I, when we talked about the room, I sort of talked about my frustrations in previous rooms, feeling like being the only like, you know, certainly man of color, but certainly always being like the Black man in the room. And I said sometimes it'd be like, and there's no knock to people that go to Harvard or anything like that, but it'd be like 6 guys from Harvard and me. And I just was like, do we need 6 Harvard people? Like maybe like swap out a couple of Harvard people for different voices. Because I always felt the most interesting rooms were rooms when it was very contrary different things. And I would always give this kind of cheesy analogy of like the Avengers. It's like, there's different Avengers that do different things, right? You don't have like 5 Hulks. You know, you need kind of stuff to balance it out. And so when Issa and I were talking about the rooms, I don't know if we were, can you correct me if I'm wrong, Issa? I don't remember us being so binary about like this voice or that voice. I think we just wanted the voices to be specific and not repetitive. And I think that was my thing for Issa's thing. I was like, well, we have the most truest version of an Issa voice in Issa, and obviously no Black woman can be like, there's one Amy Aniobi, there's one Issa, there's one Grace Edwards, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't need a bunch of people that have a similar point of view of Issa. I need something that will hopefully be contrary or complementary, maybe in a different way. And I think that's how we went about the room, was just trying to find voices that felt specific, whether that's a writer that's really great with story or a writer great that has like a darker sense of humor or this person, but we just wanted the voices to feel specific.
I mean, he mandated that. I didn't know what to look for. It was my first writer's room, so I was going off vibes.
Okay, let's see. What did you guys do when you got stuck? How'd you overcome being stuck?
We would, you know, like, again, go out, talk it out. We would take the day. I think one of the also great things about Prentice's style of running a room is that we wouldn't try to hammer it till 9 p.m., 10 p.m. We knew that, you know, we just weren't there. And then, you know, we might go home early, and then maybe a writer like Phil or Amy or somebody else would send an email and say, hey, I was thinking about this, and that would set us off for the next day. But we just didn't put too much pressure on ourselves until, you know, we really had a lot of pressure. We had shooting to go, and everybody was just always so great about giving their extra time and their extra time and thinking about the show, you know, beyond our hours. But living life is so important to our show. And sometimes people will go out and have experiences and be able to come back in the room to break us out of that rut. But season 5 was especially harder because we couldn't do that. We couldn't, you know, we were kind of stuck on Zoom, and that would be really frustrating. And, you know, we just kind of had to work it out the best that we could, but it was definitely the longest writers room we've had.
Yeah. You also have to, like, I think there's a part of the room, you just have to like trust the magic dust will happen. You know, it's hard, even if you don't see it, right? Like at 10 a.m., you may not know how you're going to solve this problem, but I always felt like if you hire the smarter people than you and more talented people than you, then like they're going to solve it. Because I had been a part of rooms too where the showrunner needed to be the smartest person in the room. And that's like, I don't think a great place to be from. And for me, I was always trying to impress my staff. Like, you guys are so funny or it's so talented. I'd be like, I'm funny. I'm trying to impress you. I was trying to impress these people. Like, that's the point. And so for me, I always wanted to be funny to them, you know, and, you know, so for me, I was like, these people are way more talented and funnier than I am in great ways. And so probably why I keep trying to work with them.
I have something to add there too. I think, like, to Prentice and Issa's credit, I feel like in this room more than any other room I've been in, moments that we felt stuck, it felt like a lot of times, Prentice, you would sort of turn to like personalize an issue. Like you might say, okay, so for any of the women in the room, or you might specifically say like, Fran, for you, you know, I feel like sometimes what would get us out of those stuck moments is like taking the story point we're having, but trying to like personalize it. And I've never had a showrunner before or since really like personally pick out a writer or two and ask them their opinion in that like supportive, thoughtful way, so that, you know, you might have something popping around in your head, but now you're being like thoughtfully asked to talk about it. So I think like turning to the personal experience of all of us and trusting that like if we personalize it to us for a moment, it might help us, you know, talk about something or say something that provokes thought that we can then apply to our characters. So I think that's like a very, very useful, cool thing that I learned from you guys and definitely will take with me.
I think you guys also really inspired us to trust the process
you know, that we were all in, and that somebody would, you know, throw something out that somebody else would pick up. And like, you know, you guys were always really amazing at keeping us from like, you know, getting too bogged down. You just really inspired us to trust each other, which is like really, really rare.
Yeah. Also, I gotta say, I like when we voted on stuff.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the other day. We used to vote on stuff like a lot. And I think this was Issa's idea. Let's vote. Yeah. I was thinking about, I was like, why was that so fun? But I think what it would do is like, okay, people are voting this much for Lawrence, this much for Daniel, this much for this, whatever the topic was. Yep. But I think at a deeper level, it also was like everybody's voice in the room matters. And I think like at a base level, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like the beauty of the room was how flat it was, right? Like your opinion matters because you are a person with a unique experience. And so I think that those are some of the memories that I look back on fondly, where it's like, this is really, really critical to the season. Let's vote. Let's do a blind vote and then let's talk about it.
Part of season 4, where Issa would be like, okay, I just rewatched season 5.
Right.
Season 2. We should vote. We would vote one day and there'd be a vote in place. And then Issa would be like, you know what? I watched it last night. Now I'm kind of team Nathan. Let's vote.
What? Multi-tiered votes. It got like, if this, then this.
There was closed eyes. Like heads up, 7-Up style vote.
Do you remember one thing that you voted on that we ended up seeing that was in contention?
Everything. But no, obviously, Lawrence versus Nathan. Season 4 was big about Lawrence versus. Was it Nathan?
That was whether they put you guys back together. Whether Issa and Lawrence should be back together.
After 8, and that made 8 move too. Because
it used to be in the beginning of the season.
Yeah. It was in 4 at the beginning.
Yeah, it was like 4, and then maybe it's after the black party, like right after the black party. At one point, Lawrence was at the block party with Issa. Like there were just so many ways that it could go, but that vote, and I felt like we were so split, and some people were just. And we had the votes of like either Lawrence, they break up, or nobody. Like we just always had different versions, but we were pretty evenly split. I think there were some unanimous ones where someone would be.
I think Sarita was always Daniel. I think Sarita was always Daniel.
I was always Daniel too, baby. But now me, Fran, and Sarita are Team Daniel for life. But
we voted in season 1 on who she was going to end up with in the end.
Right.
Can't tell you who won, but we voted Lawrence, Daniel, or no one in season 1.
There was a vote that like Laura, you were like out somewhere and it was tied, and then you like walked back in the room. And
I was in a production meeting, and I was in like a props meeting, and you all started texting me like, "Come back right now!" And it was like, well, I don't know what hairdryer.
But I think that whatever you ended up choosing, we then kind of went down that way. And then when we got stuck, I remember us all being like, "Fuck you, Laura! This is all Laura's fault."
Yeah, that is what happened. That feels right.
You all seem like you've had a ball together. I'm curious if you could talk about what's each of your writers' like superpower, and did everybody have their own kind of like magnificent special, power that they were able to leverage in the room? Or was anybody known for one specific thing?
Amy?
No, y'all just.
Yeah, we were saying it about ourselves, or you're complimenting us?
Oh, yeah.
No, Laura, say it about yourself.
Absolutely not.
I will say that this is me complimenting someone else. Amy, I would say that I always call myself like saying, I'm going to put on my Amy hat. And when I say that, that means like I'm really going to dive in and like really set the scene, meaning like the specificities of like what's happening. Like, what is this person drinking? What are they potentially watching? What kind of glass would he have? What kind of glass would he hold? Or that they're not just at dinner, they're at this specific restaurant because this person is specifically like this. Like, I think you get in your bag when you do that. I feel like that's your power.
Love that.
You're welcome.
Kinsey, I say I'm just gonna return the favor instead of.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna say you have unlocked us a few times because you've talked about it, speaking, even like echoing what Fran was saying about making it specific to you. And I remember we were so caught up in the guise of it all, and you related something to your personal life and how you had a conversation with your dad, and you were like, in 10 years, none of this shit will matter. And I feel like that's kind of like embedded in us when you said it. And I feel like it kind of influenced how we did the time jumps in the finale. And I'm like, you not only bring some of the hardest jokes we have, but also that specificity of how things relate to you. That's your superpower.
Thank you.
Yeah, also, can I just add something to the Kinsey compliment? She also can write raps. Like,
this is true.
Very good at verses too.
Yeah.
So that's a superpower of yours.
Also, Kinsey. Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna hop on another Kinsey.
Yeah, go ahead, Prentice. I got you.
I'm gonna hop on the Kinsey train too, because one, there's two things I have. One, Kinsey was our contest winner season 2, and just would grind, and that's what made her get on the show into the writer's room. But I always felt Kinsey would be like, would do the like, that's whack check. Like whenever if we pin something, Kinsey would be like, I don't know, that's whack. and like just dry and just like no fucks. And I was like, I'm a 47-year-old man, and I'd be like, ooh, that hurt. That Kinsey just checked me or checked the idea. But she would be right. Kinsey would be right. She just always has her like tuning fork of like what just would ring true or false was just so keyed in that I was like, if Kinsey saying it's whack, and we don't even need to entertain it past this second.
Can I ask, Prentice, that approach seems, for everything we know about showrunners in Hollywood, seems a bit different from the norm. How did you establish that environment and that vibe? How did you let people know it was a safe space to come and challenge you or tell you that your ideas were whack?
I mean, nobody's above reproach, period. I mean, but I think that also starts at Issa, right? And I think that segued from Issa's just, wanting to be truthful and like admitting mistakes. And I watched that in the writer's room with her. I watched that in the cast, right? Like nobody's above like anything. We're all trying to make this show be better. And I think she just set such a great bar across all those things, whether it was, production staff, editors, like, oh, I could be wrong too. And I think we were all trying to, and I think in essence, you gravitate to people that feel that way. Like somebody asked me, like I was talking about how Issa and I met like 15 minutes. And I think it's like, I don't know, how do you like meet somebody and like start dating them? And you just go, the chemistry is great. And I think you're gravitated to people that feel like you, right? And so I think even if Issa and I weren't making a show back then when we first met, we just would have been friends. We just would like to hang out. And I think everybody in this room is similar in that way. So I think we just gravitated to the writers that were similar, that how we would rock. And so it's not how did we pick? It was like you gravitate to people that like feel like you. And so everybody here was like, we're just trying to make dope shit and be cool and have fun. And so I don't think it was anything I fostered. I think it was just the people we rock with. Yeah,
I got to say, Prentice and Issa, you guys did foster it. It was, coming from other rooms, it was a breath of fresh air. I remember we went on this retreat, and I think both of you were like, we need personal stories. We need you to kind of be honest and vulnerable. And I remember I was like, all right, the first thing I'm going to say is, I'm in my 30s and I don't know if I'm happy and I'm looking for happiness and I don't have myself figured out in relationships. What do y'all think about that? y'all still fucking with me? The first thing I pitched was like, I don't know if I'm happy and I'm trying to be more intentional about it. So I felt it right away because you guys definitely set the table for us to kind of contribute to the show in a way that was personal without fear of judgment or anything like that. Coming from other rooms, I think this was a very, very special thing that you guys set up and enabled us as writers in the room.
And there's a lot of rooms that, kind of say that, and say like, oh, it's a safe space and like everybody there. And then like, it's very clear that it's not. But like, Issa and Prentice, like, really led with so much like humility, that was really like, so much humility that like, it just, I feel like if you're in a space where everybody's saying this is a safe space over and over again, it's not a safe space. Like this was just like it was very clear you know, like that that people trusted each other. And, you know, I got to the privilege of coming in season 4 with a few of these folks. And it was, you know, it was like just being welcomed into a family. And like, it was a really, really special thing. So, I mean, you guys did that.
Yeah, I also just to talk about that retreat. I remember I came in season 4 with Jason and some other folks. And I remember I was nervous. And I remember the first night we went out to dinner, I went too hard and like dressed up and I was just like, ah. And so I felt like Prentice could sense my anxiety. So I remember he pulled me aside and he said something that I always remember. And he's just like, a showrunner is like a painter. And you guys are all of my colors. So I don't need, like, we already have blue. So I just want you to come in and show your color to the room. And I remember that just like put me at so much ease. And it was something I always thought about, like when I would say something awkward, I'd be like, well, that's my color showing up. It's beautiful to be allowed to like express your full self without feeling like you're going to be judged.
For Issa and Amy, you all have known each other for quite a while, and you know, have turned your previous work into this now phenomenon. I'm just curious to hear from you both. If you could sort of summarize your journey as having started out so long ago as friends and collaborators, and now having become these pioneers. How'd you sort of learn and grow together?
Yeah, well, Amy and I went to school together. She was a year older, but we knew each other around the same time, but didn't really connect in school until a mutual friend, Tracy Oliver, was helping me with my web series, Awkward Black Girl. And she, you know, later on was like, you need writers. Like, you need, like, let's get a little writers room together. And I was like, what? So she hit up Amy and another writer named OC, and we would meet at Amy's house and just break the rest of the Awkward Black Girl episodes together. And Amy is just so fucking funny. Like, seeing her, you know, beating this web series out on the page, which I was barely writing on pages, to be honest, was its own thing. But to have an official writer's room with, at the time you were in the Happy Endings, you were working.
Yeah, which is where I met Prentice. I was an assistant on Happy Endings when Prentice was a producer there.
And I remember just seeing her jokes on the page, like, she can do this? Like, what is this? This is a whole nother level. And almost feeling like a mentorship there, but like that bond there was incredible. And then one of the things I'll never forget is, you know, obviously Awkward Black Girl ended. I was done with that and was trying to develop other shows. And we were just having dinner one day, and Amy was off in other writers' rooms. She was just kind of out of here, and I wasn't really in the television space like that. But at that dinner, she was like, look, if your show ever pops off, if, you know, Insecure ever happens, like, I will leave whatever room I'm in and I will come work on that shit. And it was just so, I felt so touched by that, because, you know, I hadn't done anything, and she was on these other reputable shows, and the fact that she really meant that, and was gonna come and potentially abandon something to work with another fellow Awkward Black girl, to see that through meant so much to me. And, you know, as soon as we got the opportunity to have a writer's room, that was the first person I told Prentice I wanted to hire in the room, and he was already on the same page.
I mean, yes, I felt that shit. I meant that shit hard, because literally, like, there's nothing like being, you know, just recognized from someone who looks like you. And like, I love all of the rooms I was on before Insecure in many different ways, but like that recognition of someone who's not only like they're laughing with you, they get you, you don't have to explain the joke, it's just natural. And I was like, I remember after Awkward Black Girl, like going into my first room and being like, I will be chasing that feeling for the rest of my life. I was like, these white people will never understand. And so it was really selfish of me to go to Issa and be like, say the word and I will abandon where I am because I want to feel seen. You know, it was really because like, I just wanted that comfort again of being in a warm space. And yeah, I'm so obviously so happy that it worked out and that we got to do this. This has been like, yeah, incredible.
Issa, as creator, I've heard you say, when you came in, you hadn't worked on TV, you weren't really sure what you were doing. I'm curious, how did you sort of mitigate and balance being the person in charge, but also knowing when to kind of put your foot down and assert, your vision versus taking maybe a step back and listening to people who are more experienced? Or how did you sort of navigate that rift between not necessarily knowing what you were doing initially versus being the one who started this and this is your show and this is your baby?
Yeah, I was very deferential and I was very honest about the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. And Prentice was hired as the showrunner and he always fostered a space to make sure that my vision was being executed. And while there were some certain storylines that I thought, that I was certain that I wanted to be in season 2, and through talking things out and through actually having a room, I realized, oh my God, these ideas are actually way better, or this is a more interesting path. And that doesn't take away from, I think so often, even coming up, you see people being rewarded and being praised for the fact that this is their idea or their sole creation. And I don't think I ever needed that. I really value the collaboration system. I love being able to, credit someone's idea because they made this possible. And that doesn't take anything away from me. We're all collaborating to make this the best possible show. And there was an appreciation of like, wow, we have all these people dedicated to making sure that this idea is great. And, we have this leader who's also fostering an environment where that's so. And so I just really soaked up the learning. And I think the most humbling experience and the scariest experience is generally when we'd write a script, we would edit it in the room together and kind of just go through it page by page.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that process. And so I had to, obviously I had the pilot, but that's different. We, make the pilot and then the writers get hired based off of that. And so then in the writer's room, I had the second episode. And so Prentice was like, all right, so now we're just gonna go through and edit it and put it up on the screen. And I was like, hold on, what? Maybe you just go line by line and just knock my shit out. And so, you have to just sit there silently. And obviously I'm aware of the fact that people are also gonna be kind of cautious about critiquing the girl whose show it is. But I think the environment was so safe, and I learned so much through that process. And I think that was me going first and, having my shit ripped. And it wasn't ripped apart, but it was ripped, also set the standard that like no one is above this and we're here to make the best show possible. And I'll never forget like that kind of setting the tone, and also furthering the fact that I don't know everything and it can always be better.
That's really amazing.
I think something that's going like, just having worked with Issa and like what's going like extremely unnoticed right now to some people, I just want to like point it out because you always ask, because you're asking great questions about like what's the secret like this, and like the truth is like, I've been a part of shows and it's like when you're asking about showrunner things like that's like at the end of the day, like hurt people, right? And healthy people try to help people, right? And I think to what Issa's saying about like, hey, it doesn't, at the end of the day, like I'm trying to make it be the best it can be. I don't need to get the credit for this. It doesn't, what she said just now, me giving your prop doesn't take away anything from me. And that is such a specific thing because I think I've worked with really great showrunners and I've worked under people where like, I have to get the credit for this because it means something else in a world of my own life that has to represent. And I think like that fosters a certain environment. That energy fosters an environment, right? And I think what Issa's saying, that what she just said is how she wanted to foster the environment. And that energy got fostered through the cast, through the writer's room, through directors, through editors, which is at the end of the day, we're all trying to make it be better. And it doesn't take away from anything about me as a human being. But if you're not comfortable sitting in that as a human being, right? Then how you run a show is just an extension of who you are as a human being, and so on, right? So I just think I don't want to let that just go, because that is actually such a great nugget for people as they come up, is to be like, if you're not secure, who you are before is who you are when you're doing it. And if you're not right in the best healthy way, then like, you're just not going to be a healthy individual doing this job or being a writer or being whatever. So it's like, you got to fix that before you can come over here, because you're just going to be another version of that.
That's very well put. That's very well put. Gosh, so many great viewer questions. Here's one of my favorites. Why do Kelly and Amal hate each other? I'm wondering this so long.
Literally because you always see the gay guy and the bigger Black girl be besties on every other show. And season 1, like, I feel like it was Natasha's pitch, who was, because she had an experience where she went out somewhere and a guy she didn't know like stuck his whole hand in her hair, and she was like, unacceptable, you can't do that, that's not okay. And we were like, well, how do we make that relationship unique? And on another show it would be like fierce hunty, and on this show it was like, no, they're not gonna be.
That's so funny. What characters did you all find the most challenging to write, and who was the most fun to write?
Sometimes Lawrence would be hard to write. Sometimes I remember us being like, we don't have to see him. Like, I think even, was season 3, was that a result of us moving into the second half of the season 2? It's just, I mean, there were definitely times where we thought that Amy, say it.
I was just gonna say, do you remember, Fran? It was you, me, and someone else. We had a whole Lawrence, we tried.
It still exists somewhere. There is an alternate season with a few Lawrence episodes, and they are out in the universe singing.
It's what became the chlamydia cold open. Is you wanted it to be, instead of it just being the cold open where you saw his life, you wanted a full episode about his life, and we really struggled with.
But we did
making that 30 pages.
It lived for a day, and I think Issa liked it for like at least one night.
At least a night. Yeah, she came in and was like, "This sounds good," and we were like, "Huh?
Hello,
y'all."
Hello.
I think y'all fucked yourselves putting him on the trolley.
But Daniel was also someone else that was hard to write for. Like, we had made him so cool, and that ended up being really rewarding. Is just kind of cracking the surface of who Daniel is. What Prentice?
No, we made him cool. We made him beatbox. I will go down the ship. I thought it was sexy when we pitched it. Amy, shut up. Amy.
We were like, oh, yeah.
You told me, I was like, yeah. And you told me too, because I was.
It got shot, it got edited, it's in the episode.
You're not wrong. We committed. And the fans were like, what the fuck? We were like, uh-oh.
I remember in the table read a line like, we kind of look like this. Like, and then, so shout out to him for committing to it. And he would be like, I have to be like, oh yeah. Bob.
Here's another fan question I like. Let's see. Just because someone is funny in general, do you think there's an additional challenge with conveying that sense of humor in screenwriting?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sure. So it's worded as, just because someone is funny in general, do you think there's an additional challenge with conveying that sense of humor through screenwriting? I guess another way of putting it is, just because you're funny in real life, does that necessarily mean you'll be funny on the page? And how do people sort of mitigate that or work through that?
Well, I'm not funny. I'm not funny. So, but I can write some funny things. I'm just kidding.
No, don't lie. Hard.
What did you say, Eli?
There he is. I don't know what that. What did that come from?
So Phil, then as a follow-up, I guess someone might.
I was doing a bit. I think I'm pretty funny. I was doing a bit. That was just a joke.
He was being funny.
Yeah.
But
you see, the joke needed some work. That's why I need
Clearly, there's a difference.
I'm a little slow. What's your guys' favorite episode across your 5 seasons? Do you have one?
Coachella.
Season 2 finale.
Yeah, season 2 finale for me.
Why is that?
Amy?
It was both so much fun to break as a room. Like at the time, one of our writers, Jen Regan, she made like a whole like board because it was 30 days of Issa, 30 days of Lawrence, 30 days of Molly. And she made a whole board, like beautiful mind style, like where they interact. And it was so much fun to break. And then Melina just like elevated it. She's Melina Matsoukas. Like it was just such a beautiful, it was better on the screen than we ever could have imagined on the page. And it felt like a journey.
Amazing. Lots of people are asking, what is the best way to land a job writing on a hit series?
You gotta make it the hit series low key, but I think it's be cool. That's, I think, number one. I can't tell you, how many talented writers that we met with that we read on the page that we were super excited to meet. And in the interview, it was just like, don't want to be around this person for 8 hours. No, I don't. And I think that, being able to being able to contribute while also just being a cool person is essential and kind of underrated. I don't care how smart you are, how funny you are, if you bring a certain energy to a room, it can really derail the entire room.
I heard that. If you can maybe elaborate on that a little bit more, what that energy look like as somebody who shoots down ideas and doesn't contribute, or somebody who's like negative Nancy? What does that look like so people know what not to do?
All of that. Yeah. An ego, like I love, certain rooms operate in different ways, but like I feel like Prentice and Issa, Jason talked about it, like just how they lead from a place of humility, like best idea wins, we're all equal. And if you don't have that energy, you can be super talented, but maybe not the talent for this room, because that's not how this room functions. But different hit shows work different ways. So I know of hit shows where it was like dog eat dog, cutthroat, like we want someone who's gonna cut someone at the knees. And I'm like, that's one way to run a room. That's not this room. So
that's what I would say about like what you gravitate to. So if you're a person that's like, that's the energy you want and you thrive in that energy, then like, that's who you're gonna hire, is people that like feed some, not always in absolutes, but that's the energy you're feeding on that works for you. And that just wasn't gonna work for this room. And I think to what Issa's saying is like, go in there, be yourself, I've just seen more writers lose jobs, like have the job and lose it. Then, because the truth is, if you are meeting with the creator and the showrunner of the show, you've done the heavy lifting. Like we've read so many scripts, and most of the times you're not reading past page 10. If it hasn't grabbed you by page 10, then you're just like, I don't know what to do. So if you've gotten past page 10 and you've done enough to like say like, we want to meet with them, that means like we're taking time out of our day to sit down with you because we want you to be all the amazing things that you were on the page. And I've just seen, Issa and I've seen so many things where people, we were just looking at each other afterwards like, nope. Like,
but even the being yourself part is so important. And I think, to what Grace said about Prentice's analogy about paintbrushes and colors, I think in those interviews, we are looking for you to be yourself. And I remember Laura was one of our early interviews, and leaving that, like her meeting stuck with me because I was just like, I have never met anyone like her. And she felt so interesting to know now, but so confident in who she is. And
why is that interesting to know now?
That's literally what Tiffany says to Issa at the going away party. Issa, there is no one like you.
Let's elaborate on, let's live in this for a little bit.
There was just, there was an element of like being extremely smart without trying while being funny, and like all of these things where I was just like, oh, she was just really herself and so unique, and that stuck with me. And I think I can say that for every writer here. It was just like, oh, I felt like I got a genuine piece of you, not someone, obviously people are trying to get jobs, but I feel like everybody here would be okay without this show. They'd be doing just fine. But in some ways, I feel so lucky that we got these pieces of amazing people.
Another great question from one of our viewers is, particularly for the writers, what would you take from this room to your next one?
Everything. Yeah.
I mean, to be back in that room.
When Amy was talking about like how like feeling like, is it ever going to be this good again? That's definitely how I feel with this room, and just like always been chasing it. Like Issa and Prentice created something so special, and it, it's just testament to who they are as people. So yeah, truly everything. Yeah.
I take that like having relationships and working on those relationships within the room will only help you. And just, that every room is a unique ecosystem, but setting like a foundation where you get to know each other and you see each other as people, not just coworkers and hopefully friends, but it just makes the experience, it can only help you, because like shit's gonna be hard no matter what. So you want the people that you're going, it's going to be great sometimes. And we had a lot of great times, but no matter how good it is and how much you love each other, there are still going to be really tough days. And, there's still going to be a lot of mud to slog through. So you want to be going through that with people who, like, outside of the work world, you respect, you trust, you care about. So I think for me, like, realizing, and also I think we learned a lot of that in season 5 when we weren't together and we couldn't build, thank God we already had those relationships, but we couldn't build them any further face to face in 5. So for me, it's like every room I go to, no matter what, I want to try to connect with the people around me and try to engender that vibe in the staff if I can, just because I've seen how, those relationships blossoming just make it so much better.
Yeah, the work was never more important than the people. And that's like, in this business, it's very rare, and I never felt like, the work ever had to come at the cost of anybody's welfare or comfort, and that's something I'll carry with me forever.
Just to piggyback, I think finding the fun in the process and then still being thorough in the process was like the biggest thing. And I remember, when I was on set for this last season, I was picking Issa's brain because I was about to run my first room. I was like, what would you, what's your advice? And she's like, hang out with your writers as much as possible, get to know them, spend time with them, because the more that you know your writers, the more that they feel comfortable, the more empowered they're feeling. So that's 100% what I try to do.
Yeah, Phil hit it on the head. I'd say like this room was really fun, but also very efficient too, they really knew how to just create environments where we just divide and conquer, even when we're like, Prentice is talking about splitting the room in 2 sometimes and then coming back. I thought, just fantastic, and something that I brought into, my world, into my room too. So just learning from them has been fantastic.
Awesome. We're just about out of time. Everybody's dying to know, are we getting a movie? Are we getting and just like that, Insecure style? Like, what's up? Or how soon are we getting that, rather? Reunion.
Issa has left the chat.
Right.
You got the answer.
Oh, they really have that.
I don't hold your breath.
I think we're just about out of time here. Is there anything, any last point you'd like to close on?
Well, I'll say that like I'm noticing the chat and everyone is like sharing their social media, their networking, and I think that's fantastic. Like I love to see that because if you'll notice from what Issa said, like she met, Amy in college and they worked together, they did this together. Now look at what's been created from that. So I'd say to everyone in the chat who are like sharing information, work together, create something together, because years from now or not too far from now, it can become something like this. So I encourage that. And I think we all encourage that. That's fantastic, guys.
I'm just so proud that I got to work with every single person in this square. And I'm so honored and proud of all the showrunners now that are on this panel in these squares that are now have their own shows. And I could not root harder for them and happier for them and all the success everybody is having individually, collectively. We all still work together in different ways. And I'm just so, this show is so life-changing. And I love my sis. She knows how I feel about her. And I'm just so thankful that I got to be a part of this. This was it was everything.
Wonderful. Well, I think that will do it. Thank you everybody for being here tonight to hear all these great panelists from this beloved series. And we wish you all the best. We are dying for a reunion already, or season five or something. I'm speaking for myself, but we're all enormously proud of you all for what you've done. And this is a great pleasure to hear you speak, and very nice to hear how you talk about one another as well. So thank you.
Malcolm, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Malcolm.
Next time.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
Love y'all. Peace.
Bye.
Everybody.